It's Paul Marsh, and I am delighted to say that I have been joined by one of my favorite comedians, Scott Bennett. Scott, how are you, sir?
Thank you very much. Favorite comedian.
Yes.
Already flattered. Already. I'm staying on. I was
And
going to burn this off, but now I'm staying.
do you
Thank
know what the
you.
best thing is? Obviously, I say that a lot, and I'm probably lying like 99% of the time, but I actually mean it this time. It's really,
Oh,
really nice. My wife and I discovered you, I want to say a year, 18 months ago, something like that, through the the Facebook and the Instagram viral clips and all the other bits and pieces. And yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, our favorite comedian. We every time one comes up in our timeline, we sit and watch it together and roll up laughing. You're absolutely brilliant.
oh, very, very sweet. Thank you, Paul. I do appreciate that.
Well, I've started with something really, really nice, and now I'm going to take you right back down again. You have just announced your 2025 tour called Stuff. You
Yeah.
start the tour on Friday, the 14th of March in Grimsby. Now, my sister lives in Grimsby. Did you think to yourself, let's start at a low point and then it can only get better from there?
I mean, I've got to be careful. It's sold out as
Yeah,
Grimsby.
it
So
has sold out.
I'm not going to lose any tickets. Look, the thing is with comedy is you go to where the need is most. And I've been to Grimsby and, they need it. I'm not going to start in Cambridge or Oxford because, they've got options. Whereas
Yes.
Grimsby, I always start a tour with what feels like missionary work. Um, it feels like a show you get a grant. Listen, I love Grimsby. I tell you something now. It's funny because I've gigged all over, and you can never predict what the audience is going to be like. So they can wrong foot you. There's people with money in Grimsby. There's people with dreams in Grimsby. And so I'm not gonna coat the place off. But yes, we're going out. We're starting the first night in Grimsby, which feels right. It can only build from there.
The one thing I will say, I went to see my sister in Grimsby, I think it was last year. And when we
Yeah.
went to Portsmouth, it was really, really nice and sunny and lovely. And by the time we got to Grimsby, it was nice and sunny and lovely, but just so unbelievably windy.
Yes, oh, it is. It seems to be very open. I mean, the place I'm doing the gig is the brewery, the Docks Academy, which is really good. So it sort of feels like because they have like food vans there. I think the place is an old church, and it sort of feels like comedy meets a natural disaster, sort of emergency shelter. But it works. It's a great venue, and they have a cracking. They're always going to be boozy, and a good laugh. So I think the first night is always the tricky one. You want to get one on the board, like get some runs on the board. But I feel like Grimsby is the perfect start.
By the way, Comedy Meets Natural Disaster is a great name for your 2026 tour.
Think I've jotted it down already. Thank you.
You can have that one. I'll give you
I
that
won't be
one.
able to. Yeah, I won't be able to go back to Grimsby, unfortunately. But the good place.
But you're touring all around the UK. Your tour
Yeah.
finishes on the 28th of November in Chorley. So you
Hmm.
are touring for like 6 months. Now, I'm always really, really envious of comedians. The amount of comedians that I've interviewed lately who have a young family and think, sod this, I'm off on tour for 6 months.
Well, it's a weird one because I try and get home. So what I actually do is I have to still do school runs and stuff. So I think I'm only going Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Right.
Uh, so I'm actually at home. But yeah, I mean, my reality is I very rarely get to stay in a hotel because I have to sort of get up and do the school run. So that's what I love about the life I have is it's very ordinary outside of stand up. You think it's all very showbiz and that I'm going to be waking up, in a spa in a dressing gown, dealing with PR. Whereas the reality is, my wife's on her way out to work and she'll go, "Can you do the bin?" She needs to pack up. She's forgot a banana. So that's the real. The reality is, it evaporates immediately as soon as I say good night, which is how it should be, you
Yeah,
know.
well, yeah, exactly. But I think this is the thing, and especially for a comedian, all of that kind of stuff, it gives you great material, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And look, the reality is, I feel like you've got to have a life to be able to talk about stuff. So if you just end up sort of living in hotels and it gets very difficult. I mean, it always happens, doesn't it, when like bands become successful and people
Mm,
go, "Oh, well, they're not talking about going out and that." Yeah, because they're millionaires who live in LA. It's the frames of reference are different.
yeah.
So I think if you can stay connected to the real world, that's the stuff that people find funny. So I mean, it'd be really funny if we fast forward sort of 5 years and I become sort of massively successful. And I'm saying to you, I've got a lovely new routine about discipline in Japan. And you'll go, I'm sure that's going to work on a Wednesday in Grange, Scott. You know?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. You are coming down south. You're heading down south, coming to Southampton on the 7th of November. And
Hmm.
also, if you can't wait until November next year, you are going to be down at Horndean at the Comedy All Stars on the 16th of December as well. Sorry, the 13th of December. What can the people down south, what can we expect from some of your warm-up shows?
Oh well, they're just sort of club gigs. So it's interesting. So you've got like they're shorter sets. So the one I'm doing sort of Horndean, I'm just doing sort of 20 minutes, I think. But I mean the bill's fantastic. It's sort of Ria Lina and Dylan Moran, who I've gigged with before. So it's sort of quite surreal because I feel like it's probably like you don't really get it in any other job. Like it's almost like you're a footballer playing sort of non-league, and then someone says, "Oh, Lionel Messi's coming to do a training session." It's that sort of thing where I've had it before, where I've walked into dressing rooms and gone, "Oh God, I used to watch you in Black Books, and I've been to see you
Yeah.
before I became a comedian." And it's very surreal that you're on the same bill. That never stops,
I was
and
just going
that's
to ask you that. Do you
yeah.
ever get sort of used to that kind of thing?
No, because I'm a fan of comedy, and I feel like um, that's what's wonderful about it. You do get a chance to not only do your own stuff, but you do bump into people and work the people who you admired and you paid money to see become your colleagues, which is you don't think about that when you start, you see. So yeah, I'll be just doing a shorter set, but yeah, come along if you like it. Come to the tour. That's it. It's the shop window, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's interesting because every gig I do around my tour is sort of an opportunity to sell what you do. So it's like it's basically like me busking and then saying if you liked me playing in front of that, toilet on that week rainy Wednesday, come and see me on Saturday in a bigger toilet. Basically.
But obviously, so all of the warm-up shows that you're doing at the moment, I assume you're kind of working on new material and bits and pieces
Hmm.
like that. Um, how does it work when something doesn't work?
It's interesting because I'm doing sort of warm up for the tour itself as well. So I did a show last night where I'm just trying bits out because obviously I don't start till March next year. So I've got bits that I always try things out. The difficulty is, I think, as a comic, is you've got a sense of what's funny. You've got a sense of, oh, that could be funny. You've been doing it long enough to know. But the stuff that really works is very hard. It takes a long time to percolate, I always think.
Mm.
And it's to do with the choice of words, the rhythm, are the audience on the same page as you? Have they got the context across? And that can take ages. So I never abandon an idea. I sort of try it and tweak it and see and listen to it back and stuff. I mean, eventually, if you've done it 10 times and people are staring at you, you've got to admit you might be wrong
Yes.
on this one.
So
Yeah, so that's
there's
the
a
thing.
brilliant story that I always love, which is so if you go and see a doctor and the doctor tells you you're a horse, you seek a second opinion. If the
Yeah.
second doctor tells you you're a horse, you punch him in the mouth. If the third doctor tells you you're a horse, well, maybe it's time to buy a saddle.
Mm. Exactly. So but then what's really difficult is sometimes you'll try something and it'll work and you'll go, fantastic. You'll think you've got it, I've nailed it. And then it'll never work again. It's a really weird thing, comedy. You'll go, what happened that night? What was the audience? Why
Yeah,
did they like that?
yeah.
So that's why comedy is so hard because people only see the end product. They only see you coming out and doing something that works. Whereas the actual graft is in the creating and the tweaking, and a bit is never finished. That's the other
No,
thing.
no.
It's comics think I've had bits that I've been working through for about a year that I'm still perfecting, and I go, oh. And what happens normally is I'll record it and put it out as a clip, and then I'll go, oh, that bit so much. I could do that so much better. So you never finish, and it's unlike songs like music artists do a song and they finish it,
Yeah,
whereas
and it's done.
comedy, I don't think there is an end point,
It
which
never,
why
yeah, the
why it
joke
drives
always continues to evolve.
yeah, and which why it drives you mad. That's why, Paul. It drives
Um,
you around. Hmm.
I was talking to Felicity Ward recently, and we mentioned that her comedy changed after having kids. there's something about all parents being in the same boat. You know, it's a big audience of people that have all experienced the same thing. You, of course, didn't come to comedy until you were much later in life, you know, so
Yeah.
you don't know like the beforehand.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I did it. I didn't start till I was 31, which is quite late, really. I had one kid, another one on the way. Oh well, not another one away. Another one. No, I didn't have another one away. I had one kid, and then we had like a bit of a gap. But yeah, it's weird because I didn't have that. It's always been for me a balancing act of sort of. I always talk about that push, the romance and the reality is like I had the stakes were higher for me. So when I started comedy, I had to make it work because I always say that when people see a musician at the end of a song, they clap because it's
Yeah.
almost Pavlovian. But with comedy, if a joke falls flat, I just see shoes being removed from my kids' feet. You know, that's the thing. The reality is like, it has to work for me. So I came into it with a work ethic of I've got 2 years to make this pay. That's what I said to myself, and
Yeah.
I've not really looked back. So, but what's been wonderful is I feel like I've had a maturity of stuff to talk about. And I feel like sometimes that's more important than starting earlier, actually. I
Yeah,
feel,
I agree with that. I think, and do you know what? Funny enough, so like I say, so I was on Express years ago, and then I had a brief break, and I've been back for 2.5 years doing the show, and this exactly the same. I think that the amount of interviews I do, the amount of people I talk to, I'm 43 now. I got a couple of kids, I'm married, and general life experiences. So when I talk to people, I'd say 90% of the interviews that I do, I understand what people are talking about. It's very rare that I'll talk to somebody and I have no experience in what they're talking about at all. So I think that life experience makes a massive difference.
it does. And it also makes, because comedy is about a connection, really. It's about making people laugh, but it's about an exchange of energy. So, like the really good gigs, you stop thinking because you go, like, we're all
Yeah.
together. So
Yeah.
it's almost like you're all the same brain without trying to sound like an artist. Because essentially I'm just standing up there talking nonsense. But when it works, you go, yeah, because we're all cohesive in the same, we're seeing the same things, we're relating to the same things, but that can only come from living that shared experience. So that's why I've always done the comedy I've done, because I feel like the absurdities and the frustrations are where the comedy is. And it's how you twist those and reflect it back at people that make your comedy stand out, I think.
Well, like I say, myself and my wife, when we sit and watch you, you know those ones where you sit and elbow each other and you know you glance and look, oh, that's you, that is, and or that's you,
Yeah,
that is.
yeah.
That's what we do with your stuff. We think it's absolutely brilliant. You have supported Mickey Flanagan, John
Yeah.
Bishop, Jason Manford, amongst many, many other amazing comedians. What have you learned from them, and what did you see and think, I see why they do that, but I don't want to?
Yeah, it's been very interesting. I mean, the biggest support I actually did before all that, I did Rob Brydon.
Yeah.
That was the reason I left my day job
Oh,
because
right.
yeah, what happened in my day job, which not many people know about, is I had a proper job. I was like a product designer, so I had like a career path. And my boss, who was very understanding, he offered me the role as a director, and I had that role offered to me. And in the same week, I was offered like a massive tour support for Bryden. And I had to make the decision. And I've never hit that point in my life before, that crossroads.
Yeah.
And so I did what I recommend anyone should do is ask your wife to go back to work. Which she did. God bless her. I've always thanked Gemma for that. She doesn't do it anymore, actually. She's gone part-time. She knocked that one on the head as soon as she could, let me tell you. But so yeah, the reality was I had to make that choice, you see. And so when I did that I sort of watched Rob every night. Now, he's not sort of known for being a stand-up. He's sort of more of it's almost like variety, old school variety.
Yeah.
There's songs, there's impressions. But what I did watch every night with him was the way he connected with the audience was unlike anyone I'd ever seen. He sort of built a world Now that's what I really learned. So that the old people, because his audience was so varied. There's young people, there's old people, there's rich people, there's aspirational people, there's all sorts of different things going on. And he built this world, and then the whole show felt tailored to them. And that's the one thing I've learned. So now when I do my shows, I try and build a world of characters, because then people think you're sort of improvising, whereas you're not, but you're
Yeah.
trying to tailor it and be in the room.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I really learned. Great comics are not only funny, but they're in the room. And that is the first thing I learned, is to not put your barrier between yourself and the audience. So connect with them, let things happen as well. If things happen, funny heckles, don't race to your neck, let it build, let it breathe. Because they're always the moments people remember. You craft all this wonderful material, Pop. You spend hours doing it, and then someone goes, "Oh, when he took his fleece off." When he took his fleece off, when he stood up and took his fleece off, that moment, oh, you go, "Oh, why do I bother?" So they're the things I really learn, and and the confidence and letting things breathe, which is what I learned from watching, Jason and John, particularly Jason and John, who sort of sit down, the confidence to sit down at the start and to calmly start the show, and to not feel like, to let the audience come with you. That is a real skill of holding your nerve. And they're doing rooms of 10,000 people. I mean, it's staggering, that level of control, but you do learn that. So yeah, they're the things I've learned, really.
I want to just briefly finish up by talking about your podcast, Brew with the Bennetts.
Thank you. Yeah.
At what point did you think it was a good idea to do a podcast with your wife?
Yeah, a lot of people have said that. But basically, I've said to Gemma, and she's fantastic and very supportive. But now there's only two ways out of this podcast: it's divorce or death. So that's it. It's sort of contractually made her support me. No, what happened was, I'll tell you what happened was, in the lockdown, when everything went bonkers, we'd started doing sort of live streams from my shed,
Yeah, yeah,
started chatting to people online and building this community. And then afterwards, I thought it was quite nice. It felt like something together, because it's very lonely being. People always say it's brave to do comedy. It's brave to let someone you love do comedy. I never
right.
take that for granted. If I could tell you now how many relationships I've seen go down the toilet because of comedy, there's so many. It's unsellable. You can't, it's selfish. It's really difficult to live with. And so I thought, I've got to keep an eye on this, because as I've said to many people, if my real life in the background is chaos, on stage I can't do it. I can't hide it. I'm not that good an
Right.
actor. So I've sort of said to Gemma, the podcast is something we do together. So every Monday we sort of, what it's like with kids. You don't get a chance to talk, it's chaos. So Monday we just sit down and we just catch up and we just talk about what's happened, what we're thinking about, what's going on. And I just thought, I'm just going to record it. It was as simple as that. And so we have a cup of tea, we just sit down, and I put the and that, what's amazing now is people consider that entertainment.
Well, I was literally
Yeah.
just thinking to myself, some people pay fortunes to go to therapy. Not
Mm.
only do you get it for free, but people pay you to listen to your therapy.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? Really? I mean, what you find is, and what I found talking to Gemma as well, is that it's amazing how many people discover you. Like, I feel like as a comic, you've got to have the stand-up comedy, but the podcast and stuff gives people want the full
Yeah,
experience now.
yeah,
The days of just comedians going up and doing the thing, they're gone.
yeah, yeah.
People want to
I think that's
they
in everyday life now. It's no
it
different with
is.
me. I was explaining to somebody the other day about the fact that I hate social media, and when you do the videos where you're talking to your phone like this, and I hate all of
Yeah.
that. But it's a necessity now. You have to do it.
Yeah, and people like to do the deep dive. They like to discover, I've had people going, "Oh, I didn't know you did stand up. I listened to your podcast. I'll come and see you." And you go like, that feeds both ways. "Oh, I didn't know you did a podcast. I'll listen to that." And they want that sort of, there's things you keep to yourself, but there's things that people we can talk about on the podcast, like semi-serious stuff, like Gemma's going through the menopause early, which is a massive issue, and we talk. It's unfiltered, and we just talk about whatever, and people relate. We've got parents now who are getting ill. That happens. You go through these phases in your life. And I think documenting it and making it relatable to people is something that I feel is now, it's not oversharing, it's almost just reality. And I feel like people are looking for comfort in that. And social media and the internet has made that a possibility.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's nice to see the showbiz life, but I think
Mm,
people not like to see that they're real people as well. I completely agree with that. Look, Scott, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for talking to me. I've really, really enjoyed it. If you want to see you, if not if you want to see you, you only have to look in a mirror. But if our listeners want to see you, they
yeah.
can do that early doors. They can come to see the Horndean Comedy All Stars on the 13th of December, where you will be performing alongside James Alderson, Ria Lina, and Dylan Moran. There are a few tickets for that left, I believe. But then next year, 2025, that's the big one. The Stuff Tour, like I say, begins on Friday, the 14th of March in
Brilliant.
Grimsby. It's sold out. I apologize. I apologize, Grimsby. I will be there at some point again to see my sister. I'll be going incognito.
Yeah.
So that's when the tour starts, but it is sold out and it goes right the way through until the 28th of November in Chorley, also stopping along the way in Southampton on the 7th of November. Scott, if people want to find out a little bit more about you and all the things that you do, where can they do that?
My website is scottbennettcomedy.co.uk. I've also all over the socials, Scott B Comedy UK. Yeah, and I put stuff out every day. If you give us a follow, you'll find it all. And the podcast is Brew with the Bennetts, which you'll be able to get on all major platforms. And we've also got a Patreon as well that you can join for extra content. So yeah, do come along. Do come along and check out all my various mediums.
Scott, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Paul.